So just recently, I have hit 4,000 subscribers. I don't know what else to say other than thank you all so much for your support. I did say I had something special planned for my 4K celebration video, and this is it. So, who wants to know a little lore about me? Before I decided to do this whole YouTube thing, I actually was a fanfic writer, and I specifically was writing fanfics for Super Smash Bros. This started back in 2015 when I was 16 years old. Smash 4 had just released Roy and Ryu as DLC back in June. This was before they revealed Cloud. And with some motivation from a very special friend of mine, I was inspired to want to get into writing fanfics about Super Smash Bros. Before, I was just a casual reader, but now I was going to be the one writing. So let me take you all through this journey as me being a Smash Bros. Fanfic writer, and eventually why I stopped. And if you're interested in actually looking at these, yes, they are still available on fanfiction.net and Ao3. I will leave a link in the description for those. So my first fanfic idea was going to be a couple of Smash Brothers characters going to a bar, drinking, and having fun. Now you're probably wondering, wait a minute, weren't you 16 years old? What the fuck do you know about going to a bar and drinking? And that's the neat part. I didn't. So my point of reference was just going to be things I saw on TV. Now, I needed to figure out what characters I wanted to use for this story. This wasn't the hardest task, I just decided to choose the characters I just enjoyed playing as. On the guy's side, I chose Mario because obviously you need to have Mario. I chose Little Mac because he was actually my Smash 4 main. Yeah, in hindsight that was a terrible idea, but he was very fun in that game. I chose Link because I enjoyed playing Link in Brawl, so I definitely had to bring him in. I chose Pit and Dark Pit. Now, I actually have not played Kid Icarus Uprising back then, and I still haven't, but I did enjoy playing them in Smash 4, so they were going to be part of the group. I chose Marth, Ike, and Roy because I love playing Fire Emblem characters, even though at the time, I didn't play a Fire Emblem game at all. And then last but certainly not least, Captain Falcon, because come on, it's Captain Falcon. He's like the face of Smash Brothers, and he's a perfect comic relief type character. And then we move on to the ladies. I chose Peach, I chose Zelda, I chose Samus, I chose Lucina, and then I also chose female Robin. Now what Smash Brothers fanfic writers usually do is, if a character has a male variant and a female variant, they would separate them and write them as two completely different characters, which is what I went for here. So in my case, we have male Robin and female Robin. The female version is called Robin, and then the male version I called Rob. Not like Rob the robot, but like Rob, because, you know, Robin for short. Now, in hindsight, I should have just called him Reflay, you know, his Japanese name, but I was a very stupid 16-year-old. This will also apply to Corrin, where the male version I called Corrin, and for the female version I called Kamui. And when we get to Byleth, the male version is Byleth, and then the female version is Beth. And they were all different characters, okay? Now that we have that set up, that's going to make things less confusing the further we get into this video. So, I got my characters, I got my plot line. Now it's time to actually start writing. And man, looking back at that story is yeah, I was definitely 16 years old.
This nigga is trash.
But we all gotta start somewhere. So nothing major actually happens in this story besides me setting up one of the more niche pairings in Smash Brothers fanfics, and that was Dark Pit and Lucina. Now, why pair Dark Pit with Lucina?
I don't know.
If I recall correctly, the main reason that this pairing in particular happened is because back during the Smash 4 era, Dr. Mario, Lucina, and Dark Pit were really hated in the Smash community because they were clone characters and they were taking slots from characters who were more deserving of a slot. Even though in reality Sakurai just had extra time to make these characters into their own, but you know how it is arguing with Smash fans. It's like arguing with a brick wall. So, a clone that everyone hates and another clone that everyone hates. We can work with that. This is Super Smash Bros. After all. Crack pairings are like aplenty in this series, and as long as you're good at writing it, you could convince people that it's a decent ship. Was I good at writing it back then? No, but I certainly tried. So for my next idea, I wanted to do a pairing that no one else has written yet, and I managed to find one. Pit and female Robin, or just Robin in this case. Why these two in particular? Well, Pit himself isn't the brightest character in the roster, and Robin, well, you know, tactical genius. Yeah, it's kind of the dumb boyfriend, smart girlfriend dynamic that you've probably seen before, but I think what makes this pairing even funnier for me is that since Pit doesn't know how to read, Robin can read for him, so it all works out. Let's fast forward a bit to 2016. Cloud had just released back in November of 2015, and in 2016 we got the reveal of Corrin and then Bayonetta as our Smash Ballot winner. So during this time, I'm 17, and I actually did play Bayonetta 2 on the Wii U, and it is one of my favorite games of all time. I love that game so much, and I was very obsessed with that game at the time. So seeing Bayonetta make it into Smash made me so happy, and I knew immediately that I wanted to start putting her in my stories. Then all of a sudden, the same friend that got me into writing fanfics in the first place, she wanted me to do a story shipping Corrin with Bayonetta. Now, I really didn't want to do it in the first place because I don't like Fire Emblem. Plus, at the time, I wasn't even excited for Corrin when they released, which will be extra funny later because he actually ended up being my main in Smash 4 during its later years. But I initially didn't even want to do the story because I'm just not a fan of Fire Emblem games. So I didn't want to write a story revolving around a character from a series that I wasn't particularly a fan of. But she insisted, and I was like, okay, I'll do this one story and then I can finally move on. This one decision changed the trajectory of my entire fanfic run. The reason she even wanted me to do this pairing in the first place is because she wanted me to write femdom. And you know, makes sense. Bayonetta, tall, sexy, mature woman. And then Corrin is just, well, Corrin. This would mark the beginning of the Salt Trio. Now you're probably wondering what the hell kind of group name is that? These three in particular were some of the most hated characters in Smash 4 during this time. Cloud was the most Mickey Mouse ass character in Smash 4, and not only that, he was so Mickey that he had to be banned from both players using him in doubles because Double Cloud was just that strong in doubles in Smash 4 tournaments. Corrin is pretty self-explanatory. Nintendo fans hate Fire Emblem. And then Bayonetta, well, I don't think we need to explain any further about why people hated Bayonetta. But yeah, after this decision and writing that first Corrin and Bayonetta fanfic, I just started writing stories centered around Cloud, Corrin, and Bayonetta, as well as Kamui, aka female Corrin. And this is when I started cooking up probably the most insane thing a 17-year-old can cook up. So Corrin and Bayonetta was going to be the pairing I was going to build up. So what was going to be the conflict? When I first wrote that Bayonetta and Corrin fanfic, I kind of wrote Corrin like he was very stupid and acted very childlike, like he had age regressed mentally. It wasn't intentional, but this ended up being something much bigger later on, and it actually plays into this arc between these two. So the conflict right now is, while Corrin is falling for Bayonetta, the reality is Bayonetta is actually using him for her own selfish needs. Like, she doesn't actually care for Corrin, but she knows that he's naive enough to do whatever she wants. Now, is this completely out of character for Bayonetta to do? 100%. But at the time, this was how I was going to make this story work. And then this next conflict involves Kamui. I got a comment under one of my stories, and it was essentially them saying, "You write Kamui like a brocon." So I took this comment and I was like, what if I spun this into an incest storyline?
What did he say?
Stick with me on this, because this is actually important to the rest of the story. So the idea I had was to take Corrin's backstory from Fire Emblem Fates and add a twist to it, because now I'm working with twins. So Kamui, as a child, makes a deal with Garen that if Corrin were to do something that he didn't like, she would take the brunt of his abuse instead, which plays into Corrin's isolation and his mental age regression, which then leads to Corrin having more of a dependency on having Kamui protect them, and Kamui sees it as her brother is the only true family that she has, and she'll do anything for him. So I just decided to take that to the extreme, and it definitely made things even funnier when Corrin and Bayonetta actually got together. So let's backtrack slightly, because before getting Corrin and Bayonetta actually together, I wrote a story where I had introduced Hades. No, not that Hades, this Hades. He was going to be the big bad antagonist for the next arc I was going to do. If you remember, at the end of Kid Icarus Uprising, Hades' body completely disappears and he just turns into a disembodied voice at the end credits.
I'm just messing with you, buddy. Settle down. Your saves they're safe. I mean, I don't even have a body anymore. Couldn't delete a save file if I wanted to. I'm not even sure it can be resurrected in this state. There's the real tragedy.
So his whole mission is to kidnap someone with a pure soul in order to regain his body back. In order to have a pure soul, they must be a virgin. And who just so happens to be a virgin? Yeah, that guy. So the next few stories will revolve around Hades trying to get Corrin's pure soul. During his invasion, one of his monsters was able to heavily wound Kamui, which allowed demons from Inferno, yes, Bayonetta's version from Hell, to possess Kamui's body and try to kill her from the inside and bring her to the underworld. This was essentially going to be Hades' bargaining chip. However, that plan failed because here comes Cloud. Remember him? Haven't really talked about him in this story much because, well, he was mostly a third wheel for this beginning half of my run. The end goal was getting him and Kamui together and having him save her from these demons. It was also to hopefully get her away from her incestuous feelings for Corin, which let's just say it doesn't work out too well. And before we get to the finale of this Hades arc, we have to do another detour back to Dark Pit and Lucina. So very early in my fanfic run, I had actually written a story where Dark Pit and Lucina, well, they have sex. So now, this is where Chrom comes in, before he was actually introduced into Smash Ultimate. So he's not happy with someone taking his daughter's virginity, so he forces Dark Pit to marry Lucina, which would make Dark Pit the new prince of Ylisse. It was either that or he got executed. The conflict comes in where Dark Pit obviously loves Lucina, but he also values his freedom. So Hades comes in and he tells Dark Pit, yo, I can give you the freedom you desire. All you have to do is take Corin and bring him to me so I can have his soul. Pit intervenes and he's like, bro, no, Hades is evil and you love your fiance. To which Hades replies, okay, you don't want to help me? I'm going to kill your fiance. Which then leads to Dark Pit doing what Omni-Man did to those aliens in season 1 of... Then Dark Pit and Lucina get married. Woo! So Hades finally has enough, and in the finale of this arc, he invades the Smash world once again, and this time he actually poisons Bayonetta, which ends up being the thing that finally pushes Corin to give up his pure soul. Hades is able to get his body back, and in return, he kills Cloud, and then he continues to go invade the Smash world, while also leaving Corin trapped in hell forever. So, the main reason Hades is setting out this revenge is because he wants to find a way to revive his wife, Persephone. Getting a pure soul may have gotten his body back, but he still had no way to revive his wife. That is until male Robin comes in and he is able to heal Persephone and revive her with Corin. Now you're probably asking, where the hell did male Robin come from? So the reason he's in this story is because I had lost the bet in a Smash tournament. So my friend wanted me to introduce Mel Robin into the story and have him have an essential role into the story along with Shulk, even though I was not a fan of riding Yaoi. But I had lost the bet, and so I had to keep my word. So Persephone is now alive, Hades retreats his army and leaves everybody alone, and now everybody's happy. Are you still with me? Did you leave yet? No? Good, because Smash Ultimate is where it gets even weirder. So now I'm writing a new story where I introduce the future kids concept from Fire Emblem Awakening and Fire Emblem Fates. So we have Morgan from Fire Emblem Awakening, the male Morgan in particular. He is going to be Pit and Robin's child. And then we have both male and female Kana from Fire Emblem Fates. The male Kana, who is going to be Kana with a K, is Cloud and Kamui's child. Meanwhile, the female Kana, she's Kana with a C, and she is Bayonetta and Corin's child. And then, for Dark Pit and Lucina, I decided to commission my very first OC. I commissioned the artist Zeliavee, who is on Bluesky right now, to draw my OC Artemis, based off of the Greek goddess with the same name. And yeah, this is my Dark Pit and Lucina fan child. I'm still very proud of this. So these future children have come down to the past in the Smash realm because someone who resembles Corin has been destroying their world. If this already sounds familiar, yes, it's the Goku Black arc. I literally just wrote the Goku Black arc, but I just replaced it with Corin. I saw a beta design of Corrin during Fire Emblem Fates development, and at the same time, I was really into Dragon Ball Super, so I just thought, you know what? Let me put these two things together. I even created an original villain for this, who was literally just Zamasu. He wasn't anything special. It was literally just Zamasu, and the only thing I really changed about him was that he was an angel from Paradiso, and that's why he has hatred for Bayonetta, because, you know, Bayonetta kills angels. Now, there were two main conflicts during this story, which, I'm gonna be honest, are some of the worst decisions I've made during my run as a fanfic writer. The first one being, I let Bayonetta abandon Kana and Corrin in the future. Bayonetta didn't like the idea that she was going to be tied down and being a queen of an entire kingdom, so she just went up and left. And that is why female Kana resents her mother for what she does in the future. So that's already a mess, but I feel like it wasn't enough. You wanna know what was missing? Corrin getting cucked.
What the what?
I had Bayonetta cheat on Corrin with Cloud, and I genuinely don't know why I decided to do that. It felt like I just added some more drama that really didn't even need to be there, while ruining all of my main characters at the same time. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but now that I've grown up, I just look back at that decision like, wow, you are a fucking idiot. But the conflict gets resolved. The trio was able to defeat Corrin Black and that fake ass Zamasu. The children are able to go back to the future, but of course, since they defeated Corrin Black, things won't be the same, and I really don't feel like trying to discuss how time travel works. But this also means, since Cloud essentially cheated on Kamui, she's not gonna forgive him, like, at all. And this just caused an entire friction between the group, and it's just, I just made a mess of everything, man. Why did I do that? On the bright side, I moved on to something a bit more positive. This was during 2020 when the world had shut down, and I finally had the chance to play Persona 5 Royal. And I also played Persona 5 Striker, so I was really into my Persona phase. And I actually hadn't implemented Joker in any of my stories yet, so I figured it'd be a good time to do that. And an idea I thought was cute was Bayonetta being the mother of Joker, which was a neat little headcanon because, you know, they do look alike. And since Joker's parents really didn't bother to check up on him in Persona 5, I figured, you know, let's have Bayonetta kind of redeem her old future self by adopting Joker. I just wrote a few short stories revolving around their mother-son relationship, and I had a lot of fun with it. I just think the concept is super cute. I like the idea of Bayonetta being a mother. So this is where things get a little muddy, because Byleth had released in 2020, and I had something planned for them. And I also was trying to build up my own version of World of Light. So I was going to be juggling two different arcs at the same time, which proved to be a monumental task for me. So I'm gonna try and map out all the events as best as I can. So instead of just Byleth and Beth being in the Smash roster, I've also brought the entirety of Garrick Mach into the Smash realm. With this idea, I wanted to still do the Flame Emperor Edelgard twist like in 3 Houses, but it was going to be much harder to implement because look at all of the overpowered characters in Smash, which would make Edelgard's plan even harder. So for the Eisner twins, I was doing a story where they would do tea time with with various Smash characters while also giving my own version of Three Houses story pre-time skip. During these tea times, Edelgard has grown a hatred for Palutena and seeing her as a fake goddess. Much like how Edelgard has resentments to gods in Three Houses. And while this is happening, I'm starting to set up my own version of World of Light. I did a Castlevania inspired fanfic that featured Dracula because he's one of the bosses in Smash Ultimate. And that story ended with Darkon appearing and taking away Dracula before they could actually kill him. And then I also wrote another story where Gallium, the boss from the Subspace Emissary, comes back and he actually has a fight with Pit and Dark Pit, which is also what happens in their classic mode. This fight actually puts Dark Pit in a coma and made Pit temporarily lose his memory, which Palutena feels responsible for because she could have handled the problem herself, but she didn't because she wanted to be lazy. They've been able to defeat Gallium, but before they can actually destroy him completely, Galeem comes in and takes Gallium away. So everything starts coming to a head and Edelgard begins to enact her plan, and she brings those who slither in the dark into the Smash realm to invade. Well, you remember in Smash 4 where Palutena had a custom move called Heavenly Light and it was completely worthless? Well, that's what kills all of the slithers in the dark because, well, they're all pure evil. And Heavenly Light, in my head, is a move that purifies all evil and kills it. And that's essentially what happens. And then the whole race of the slithers just disappeared. So, after Edelgard's embarrassing defeat, Byleth chooses to imprison her so that she may never hurt anyone else ever again. So, that's another arc wrapped up, and now I can focus on my World of Light interpretation. But before I did that, two things actually happened. Corrin actually asked the Phantom Thieves for help to change Kamui's heart. They succeed in doing so, however, because they did that, it actually messes up the timeline where Kana, Cloud and Kamui's child, gets erased from the timeline. I really shouldn't have dealt with this time travel stuff. But that now means Kamui is back to being a normal person. And then I had also written a story where Sephiroth had returned and he's come back to haunt Cloud once again. But the way I wrote the story was that it was an entire dream sequence from Cloud that was also being influenced by Darkon. But at the end, I did tease that Sephiroth was real and he was actually coming back. And this all happened prior to Sephiroth actually being revealed at the Game Awards that year. So here I am. I am ready to finally start writing my own version of World of Light. I had set everything up. I framed it as the opening cutscene of World of Light, and then it changes to Sephiroth's trailer, and he beats up practically everyone in the Smash roster. And Sephiroth had Darkon under his control so that he could be able to create his new world. I even had this amazing cover art for the story that was also made by Zeliavee. But then I just eventually stopped. I had lost interest in writing the story, and after that, I didn't want to come back to writing. There were two main factors for this. One, the meta of Smash Ultimate was, let's just say it was not very fun, especially with characters like Pyra and Mithra, Kazuya, Steve, Sonic. Oh, yeah. I did not want to play Smash Ultimate with that terrible meta. And number two, and if you were there around 2020, 2021, all of the misconduct that was happening in the Smash community was just really disgusting, and it just made me extremely uncomfortable to want to continue being a part of Smash or doing anything for it. So yeah, after that, I just decided to quit writing altogether, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's how I eventually moved on to doing YouTube. I know this was all a very insane piece of lore and story to get through. Would I say I regret doing the whole fanfic thing? No. Were my stories terrible? Oh, for sure. Now that I'm much older and I look back at it, all my stories are just terrible. I had decent ideas, I'd say, but in terms of execution, all just terrible. But I felt like this was something I needed to do because, well, not only did I love it, but it also taught me how to be better in the future when working on YouTube stuff. And not for nothing, it was good inspiration. And that's really why I'm also keeping those stories up on Ao3 and fanfiction.net, because those were times where I was just a dumb teenager and this was something that I love to do. So yeah, if you stuck through with this video for this long, all I can really say is thank you very much, and also thank you for contributing and helping me reach 4K subscribers. I love doing this, so I'm just going to continue to do so, and I hope you all can continue to stick with me for this journey for who knows how long. I'm just here to continue the ride.